I decided to do my project on Cthulhu. Cthulhu is a sea monster created by H.P. Lovecraft. It's commonly referred to as the Old One or the Ancient One. It's something of a god of the ocean, and it's a manifestation of fears stemming from the unknowns and the dangers of the ocean. And it falls under the overarching genre of sea monsters. And I decided to do my project on the evolution of sea monsters as a whole because sea monsters are a special genre of monster, and since they're all born of the same fears of the ocean, but only take different forms and appearances, they're all related. Now, Cthulhu was created by H.P. Lovecraft. He released a short story called The Call of Cthulhu, and then later released much more stories about the the extended universe that Cthulhu is a part of. It's a whole world of monsters, and Cthulhu is it's basically the bane of all of them. And Cthulhu is described as a colossal humanoid figure with tentacles all over its body and the wings of a dragon on its shoulder blades. And like all Lovecraftian monsters, Cthulhu's origins are found in vague truths, which I will be discussing later. Now, the ocean. The ocean is really the last frontier on Earth. We've mapped pretty much all of the land on Earth. We've climbed the tallest peaks. We've even been to the moon. But we still haven't fully mapped our own oceans. We don't know what the animals are down there. We've only discovered 10% of ocean life. And that remaining 90%, it's very easy for people's imaginations to run free. And it's easy to imagine animals that we think are extinct still living in the deepest depths. Just for example, the Loch Ness Monster is an idea of an animal from the Pleistocene, a plesiosaur, still alive. Then in Jaws and the Meg, a megalodon, still alive. Just the unknowns of the ocean makes it very easy to make up stories of pretty much anything living down there. Now, repulsion and attraction is one of the interesting overlaps I found between this project and previous readings we've done this year. Repulsion and Attraction, it's a chapter from On Monsters by Asma, and the basic point of that short story, that chapter, was a child staring at human fetuses suspended in formaldehyde at a museum, and he was staring at them with both fascination and horror. And when asked by his mother if he wanted to stop looking, he replied with a pretty excited no. And Asma argues that repulsion and attraction have both been paired together as evolutionary traits passed down from generations. And these evolutionary adaptations are found when it comes to the ocean as well. There are many fears stemming from the ocean, such as thalassophobia, which is the fear of open water, submechanophobia, the fear of things under the surface of the water, both common phobias, and these phobias are very widespread, which is evidence, Darwinian evidence, that fear of the ocean and the dangers stemming from the water are favored by natural selection, proving that the ocean has always been dangerous and feared, and these stories of great beasts lurking under the ocean are much more deeply rooted than other stories. Now, Otis Barton and Dr. Charles William Beebe were oceanographers in the 1930s. And in the 1930s, they were the first people to ever do a manned descent into the mesopelagic zone. Now, the mesopelagic zone, it's just a zone of the ocean deep down. It's as deep as you can go where sunlight stops reaching you. So it's still slightly close to the surface of the ocean. Their record was 923 meters down, which is nothing compared to today. People who undertake expeditions into Challenger Deep, which is point in the Mariana Trench, it's 11,000 meters down. But at the time, it was a huge deal that they went down this deep, and they saw animals that they didn't expect to see down there. Like in their expedition journal, Beebe describes seeing flatfish that they never knew would be down there, just proving how little we know about our own ocean. And he also wrote in his journal about giant, shadowy figures looming just outside the range of their spotlight. And this is where Beebe and Barton were slightly different from other scientists at the time. They really embellished their ideas and put sort of a fantastic twist on it. And the general public really liked this, as it wasn't so much journal entries, it was more of a story that they were telling. And they even expanded on that and released a feature length film called Titans of the Deep, which explored the ideas of what animals and what creatures could be down there. It wasn't well received by the public, but they had attempted to tap into people's natural fascination with the deep ocean and the monsters that could be lurking there undiscovered. Now, in terms of sea monsters in popular culture, sea monsters are incredibly popular. I mean, there was a video game called The Call of Cthulhu. Um, in the top right is the Kraken from Pirates of the Caribbean. The Kraken I'm treating as sort of an extension of Cthulhu because it's much more widespread. It's in lots of movies, books, video games, and it's much more popular because Cthulhu is it's just H.P. Lovecraft's creation. It's not a story with links to legends and lore, whereas the Kraken is. And now in the lower right we have the river spirit from Spirited Away by Hayao Miyazaki, and in this picture he's pretty upset. His river has been polluted, and we'll talk about that more later. Now, sea monsters do have some connections to the real world. Now, in the top right here, we see what is called the St. Augustine monster. It was a massive, a gelatinous mass found in 1896, and people immediately thought, "Oh my God, it's a sea monster," because it was just a giant globby mess with things that looked like arms and legs. Nowadays, we know that it was a decaying sperm whale, and that was just all the blubber that was left over. But at the time, people thought it was a monster, and it just goes to show how the unknowns of the ocean can lead to people immediately thinking about monsters or anything else that they could imagine. And on the left, I have a picture of a fisherman, because as soon as the first boats started disappearing, people started coming up with fantastical ideas of why they disappeared, such as monsters or typhoons, etc. And it's usually crazy fishermen who have those stories. Now, the evolution of Cthulhu, there hasn't been much evolution because it's just H.P. Lovecraft's his brainchild. But we can expect the idea of Cthulhu to change because as fears change, so do the monsters that were born of these fears. And our fears of the ocean are definitely changing. And at the time that The Call of Cthulhu was released, the main fears stemming from the ocean were um, boats being taken by storms or boats disappearing. They can be from monsters or pretty much anything. At the time, when boats disappeared, people had no idea what would happen to them. And they just seemed to disappear out of thin air, leaving a lot of room for just crazy stories of why they disappeared. Nowadays, with our technological advancements, boats really only disappear from, I don't know, freak waves and stuff like that. So there's a lot less room for imagination. But our fears have changed from these disappearances to climate change and pollution. And we can expect to see Cthulhu and other sea monsters adapt to these changes as well.